Today, I want to talk about using e-kits to record drums and why you may or may not want to consider using one. What's up everybody, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Taylor and I do all sorts of guitar related stuff, except for today we're doing drum related stuff. But today what I wanted to do is I wanted to follow up a video that I made about a MIDI drum set. This video sort of ironically has been the most popular video on my channel in the past few months, and I get questions about it all the time. And so what I thought I would do today is I thought I would follow up that video, show you how we're using that kit or kits or combination of kits, and go over all the details on why we ended up with the kit we have now, how we're using it to record drums, and how you would go about hooking it up for that, and just kind of give you my thoughts on using an e-kit to record MIDI drums, especially in the context of what I do on my channel, which is metal music. And if you're not a fan of metal music, that's okay. I will be going over enough information in this video that should apply to most e-kit users, but some of the things I'm going to be focusing on will be specifically for the metal genre, so just keep that in mind. But before we get started, if you like my videos and you want to help me keep making them, there is a support section down in the description below with links to my Patreon and links to my merchandise. You know, if you want to wear a neck gaiter with my logo on it or something like that. If you go down into the description below and check that out, that would really mean a lot to me. All right, let's get this thing hooked up and start tracking some drums. Okay, so here's the drum kit as we use it today, and this is what we ended up with between those two kits, which again, if you didn't see that video, I'll link it up above, so that way you can get an idea of the drum kits that I'm talking about. But basically, the majority of what we ended up using was the Alesis Nitro Mesh Kit. We just felt that the mesh heads on the Alesis kit felt a little bit better, and also the Alesis module that is transmitting the MIDI notes via USB was just easier to hook up and easier to work with on the computer. It was just easier to get my computer to recognize that module, and also easier to get accurate input from that module, so that's why we ended up going with that one. However, we did end up using the rack from the Donner kit. This rack's just a little bit sturdier, and you probably can't see it, but there is a extra support bar down there by the kick pad. And we also ended up using both Donner cymbals, that way we could get 4 cymbals on this kit. One is plugged into the extra cymbal input on the Alesis module, and the other one is plugged into the extra tom input on the Alesis module. And in the Alesis module, we have those both programmed to cymbal sounds. A couple other things that we have going on here is we have an actual cymbal stand for this cymbal over here, which is programmed for our china, and we're using an actual snare drum stand for the snare drum. The little arm that comes with either one of these kits just isn't really super sturdy, and if you're a drummer that has heavy hands, or like in our case, we're using music that has a ton of blast beats, those things just tend to end up moving quite a bit, so that is why we went with the actual snare stand here. We also have a double kick pedal down here because neither one of the units come with a double kick pedal, so that is something that had to be added on. And then kind of the rogue piece that we have here that didn't come from either kit, we bought this separately, but this is a roll and bass drum pad, and the reason we went with this one is this is the only pad that we could find that could reliably transmit double bass drum MIDI notes to the computer, you know, without double triggering or giving us any of those other problems. Okay, now the way that I have the module hooked up is I have the MIDI going out into the computer via USB, and that is only to record the MIDI notes. And then I have a 1/4-inch cable going out of the mono output, and that's just going directly into the interface, so that way I can monitor myself with the drum sounds that are coming from the Nitro module. Now you can hook this up to Superior Drummer and monitor yourself that way through your DAW, but in my case here, and your mileage may vary on this, I found that that introduced a lot of latency, which made it almost impossible to track anything on time. Now this really isn't a sound demo, this is more of a technical video, but basically this is what my drummer hears when he's tracking. Okay, now that I've covered the kit and why it's set up this way, let's jump over to the computer and I will show you how to set it up in Reaper. Okay, so I have Reaper open up here and I had an actual drummer help me out with these drum tracks, so it's not me. You don't have to worry about it being terrible. First thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna go into our preferences and we're gonna go under MIDI devices, and you're gonna wanna find the Alesis Nitro kit, and you're going to want to disable the input on that. And the way that I like to do this is I like to have 2 tracks set up. I like to have 1 track set up with my plugin, which in this case I am using Perfect Drummer. And here's the kit that we have in Perfect Drummer. Not gonna go into too much detail on that, but yeah, it's there. And then on this track below, this is the one I would record on. And the reason that I do this is just so that I can punch in the drums and I can quickly and easily insert sections of MIDI drums without having to cut and edit them too much. This is just a preference thing. This is not the way you have to do it. But on the track you're gonna record your MIDI notes on, what you're gonna wanna do is arm the track, go in here into your input, go to Input MIDI, select the Alesis Nitro kit and all channels. And then you should be getting input from your Alesis kit. I'll cut over to Duncan and I recording this, that way you can hear it. Now, another thing that's really great and convenient about recording MIDI drums is, like I mentioned before, punching in parts. Traditionally, if you're recording drums, it's really difficult to splice in sections of drums because you'll have things interfering, like maybe cymbal resonances or tom resonances and stuff like that. And it can be really obvious splicing in sections of drums unless you spend a lot of time editing them. But since MIDI notes are triggering these audio sounds, you don't have to worry about any of that. If your drummer messes up a fill, you can just punch in that fill until he nails it, and you don't really have to worry about having to go through all that editing to make it sound good. And another thing that I found about using the E-Kit and that I think is kind of important to mention is that I would much rather, as a listener, hear an actual drummer playing on an E-Kit versus listen to a real drummer, like a real mic'd up kit that's recorded, but has been sliced up and quantized exactly to a metronome. This is my personal opinion, and yours may differ on this subject, but I feel like when you're listening to an actual drummer play to a click and it's a good performance, whether or not that he's playing an E-Kit and you're listening to MIDI drums, or it's a real drum set, that is much better than listening to a real drum set or MIDI drums that are perfectly quantized and exactly on the grid to a metronome. It's a really common practice in metal music to chop up drums and put them exactly to a grid and make them perfectly in time. And I think that's what robs the song of a lot of the feeling of an actual drummer playing on it. And I think in the genre, especially like the more technical metal, that's why it sounds so sterile and fake, is because even if it is a real drummer, a lot of times those drums are chopped up and put perfectly on a grid and made to be perfectly in time, and no drummer plays like that. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents on that, but let's cut back over to me over there and wrap this guy up. All right, so hopefully this video has given you a little bit more insight and an in-depth look on why I'm using an E-Kit and why, I chose to go with MIDI drums as opposed to miking up a drum set and recording it that way, and help to answer some of the questions that I get on that video. If you guys are curious about anything else or there's something that I've missed, let me know down in the comments below. Special thanks to all of my awesome patrons for helping me bring you videos just like this one. And as always, if you like my videos, make sure to hit the like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.